in the region, the Hezbollah terror group says it's downed and seized an Israeli drone as it flew over the Lebanese border on Saturday. The Israeli military confirming only that a drone had fallen in Lebanon during operational activity along that northern border, adding there is no risk of breach of information. Hezbollah said its fighters downed the drone near the town of Aita al-Sha'ab. So for the latest on this story, let's bring in our defense correspondent Daniel Tzemach from Tel Aviv. So Daniel, the Israeli Defense Force is saying no intelligence was compromised during this drone incident, but still this isn't something that can be taken lightly, can it?
No, absolutely not, Benita. And it wasn't too long ago when all the attention really was focused on Israel's northern frontier with Lebanon. After weeks ago now, Israel was attributed to a strike that took out a Hezbollah commander in Syria, leading to several different incidents that we saw on the northern frontier. And ever since the Beirut blast, there's been a maybe reduction in tension, or at least perceivably. Ultimately, though, the IDF did pull back some of the reinforcements it brought to northern Israel, but not all of them. The IDF still has a heightened alert level in northern Israel, so any sort of extreme incident that we see, whether there was intelligence breached or not, it's not a sort of positive development in any way for the IDF, who is obviously very preoccupied in several different fronts now. But when we're looking at that northern front, the threat that looms over there in Lebanon is a formidable threat, one that Israel takes very seriously. And since the Beirut blast, it doesn't seem as though Hezbollah has made it clear that they're going to let that strike attributed to Israel pass. If anything, it might just be a matter of time, and the question is when. So Hezbollah definitely still focused on retribution for what they call an Israeli strike on its own commander, and because of that, we still see the heightened alert level in northern Israel, even though there haven't been extreme incidents in the past week and a half or so. Now again, we're reminded of why the situation up there is still quite sensitive.
And Daniel, with tensions, as you mentioned, on Israel's southern front and in the West Bank, is there a concern regarding increased tensions on all fronts, and can the army actually manage that sort of scenario?
Well, the IDF has practiced these sort of incidents in the past in multi-front sort of war exercises, but that isn't to say that it would be difficult. It would be very difficult for the IDF to be equally present on all these different fronts, and it really is the case that we're seeing, of course, the southern frontier very tense as of late, with negotiations not seeming to go anywhere as far as Qatar, Egypt, and Hamas. Of course, Emily Rose, our Middle East correspondent, will provide more on that. But when we look also in the West Bank and recent terror incidents, it's definitely a cause for concern. The IDF would prefer to have one front, if at all, be escalated, and it's easier to manage that way. So they are definitely capable of managing a multi-front sort of scenario, but it's definitely not the ideal. As far as the IDF is concerned, they'd much prefer dealing with one of these in an escalated fashion at a time, which definitely contributes to the way that it's sort of delegating its forces throughout Israel's borders.